He said, bringing you in to work with my team is one of the best decisions I've ever made as a CEO, right? Which I think is a pretty hell of a good compliment. This guy's been a CEO for a long
Yeah,
time,
I'd say.
right? And he said, I've got this budget. And he's like, if I had twice the money to give to you to bring in and coach every single person on my team, I would do it. I just, they're a nonprofit and there's budgets and that's whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's the big picture. So the question is, what does that mean? And specifically what it means is, the end result is they're creating better outcomes for their end users, for their patients, which means specifically for them, they're creating a higher level and more stable recovery for people in their community who are struggling with drug and alcohol addiction.
Welcome, listeners. Today, I have the distinct honor and privilege of having a great new friend of mine. We met a few weeks ago at a conference, Clay Cutts. He is a leadership coach based out of the hot city of Atlanta, Georgia, here in summertime. And Clay's got a super interesting background. We got to spend quite a bit of time together at the conference, getting to know each other. And he's a leadership coach, but he comes at it from a training and a background of as a counselor, a psychotherapist, and of course, as a business owner. So I'm super intrigued to have you on the show today, Clay. Thanks for taking some time, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. It's always good to connect and to talk about business and leadership. Some of my favorite topics. So glad to be here.
Yeah. As a leadership coach, for sure. Well, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time getting into sort of how we got here where we are, but it is an interesting story because I've had business coaches over the years, and so many entrepreneurs I interview use coaches, believe heavily in coaches. But most of the coaches that I've sort of been exposed to have come sort of straight from the business route. They learn it kind of on the job training kind of thing, or maybe they went to business school or they built some businesses, but I don't know of any that have actually been formally trained as, as a counselor or, psychotherapy and those kind of things. So walk me through that a little bit. How did that develop?
Yeah, how in the world, right? So let me just say, I work with a lot of coaches too who come from a business background and bring tremendous value often too, and so for me, I definitely look at it from a little bit different perspective because of my training. And it's funny, I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and I was sort of walking him through the story, and he called me the accidental coach, right? And so the way the story goes is I had a sort of traditional therapy practice in suburban Atlanta, and I was seeing clients and doing my thing, and really I enjoyed it. That was my first, that was my first business that I built. But it was really the business where I really cut my teeth, because selling therapy is a tough business. No, I mean, most people don't want to spend their money on that. They'd rather go buy a boat or something, right? And so, which is a pretty good therapy in and of itself, right? But I had this therapy practice, and I was building it, and I built it outside of the insurance model, which is a tough way to build a practice. So it was all self-pay, which gave me a lot of freedom to really sort of get creative with clients in a way that was still within the bounds of ethics. And what I found, Paul, was I was like, the people I was attracting were the typical people that end up in a suburban therapy practice. But I was attracting a lot of people who were I attracted a guy who was a really successful plumber. I attracted a guy who ran a landscape business around here that was really, really successful. I attracted a guy that owned another kind of heating and air kind of business around here, right? And what I noticed was these folks didn't have peers. Right, the guy that runs a successful small business is making $1 million a year, and he's 40 years old. His friends don't get that. They don't get what it's like to worry about payroll. They don't get what it's like to have this, 6-figure tax bill come due in a quarter, right? And so, and their wives don't get it either. And so, who do they talk to? They might join a mastermind or something like that, and that helps. And so enough of them were ending up in my therapy practice. And so what I was working with them on was there was no psychopathology, but just like, how do you think about this? How do you approach this from a different perspective, like this business problem or this personnel problem? And I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and he was like, "Yo, so you're doing coaching?" I'm like, "No, this is therapy." He's like, "Dude, this is coaching." So it's like, oh, I guess it kind of is. And so, I mean, really, honest answer is I sort of stumbled into it, and I realized, wow, like I really, I mean, I love the therapy piece too, but like this, like how do I help somebody like get this really gnarly business problem? And I don't know the business. Like, I don't know what it's like to run a landscape business or a financial advisor business. I don't know. And I know how to help people think better. Right. Mm-hmm. And so like what can I do with this person to help them like change their thinking a little bit so they can approach a problem that they're an expert at and solve it sort of on their own with me sort of like, helping from behind. So yeah, and so that's sort of how I became the accidental coach.
So that is actually really fascinating. I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs that I've interviewed and just know in the world that sort of landed where they are accidentally. It's like you pursue this passion and you do it, and I picked up on here. Obviously, you were doing things differently right out of the chute because your therapy practice was self-pay and you ignored insurance companies, which is, I would imagine you're in a very small percentage of the medical world that would ever do that. And so
I was told it was impossible. I was told that's impossible.
Did that drive you to like want to do it, or did it scare you a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, another mark of an entrepreneur, right? Like, okay, Watch don't this. Tell me what I can't do. So you recognize something through just that moving in that direction that my wife and I've talked about a lot, and it's like as being a successful business owner can be a lonely place to be, right?
Sure.
I mean, it really can, because like you said, you can't, your friends are talking about, going to the lake or whatnot. And then you've got a 6-figure tax bill. They can't even, like you said, just can't even grasp their mind around that. And,
yeah.
And so, okay, so you fell into this position and then you recognized a need. And then, so how have you developed that over the years?
Yeah, one mistake at a time, mostly. but no, just really being curious and really being invested and committed to experimentation, and really sort of coming at it from a place of how can I help? Like what can I bring to? How can I partner with this business owner or that business owner in a way that creates creates traction within their business? And so, so for example, really, so like the tactical piece of it was I just started reaching out to everybody I knew and saying, hey, I'm doing this thing a little bit differently now. And like we've been friends for a long time, and I've never really looked at you as a possible therapy client, but I know you have this business. Like, can we have a conversation about your business and see if I can help? And then we have these conversations, and I would share like what about this and what about that, and like you think about it this way, and sort of walk them through a process, and people start to say, wow, that's really helpful. And most of those my friends didn't hire me necessarily, but they said, you know what, you need to meet so and so. And I would meet so and so, and we'd have a conversation. They'd say, this is great, and either hire me for themselves, or they'd bring me in and say, like, my sales team, like they're all in their heads. Can you talk to my sales team? Or can you talk to my leadership team? And so I was like, I don't know how to do a workshop. Like, okay, let me figure out how to do a workshop. And like, I like put it together and like come in and did it all wrong. And it was super helpful. Right. And so like really just just on the fly, like jumping off the cliff and building the airplane on the way down, and just like really like being informed by other models that are out there and being aware of it and like taking the best from those, but really just going at approaching business problems from a place of like, let's just get creative and come up with ways to solve business problems in a different way. And that's sort of the answer, I guess.
No, that's a great answer. Yeah, you grew into it and falling forward, failing forward, and charting your own course, right? I mean, which is what you're helping each of these business owners do, right? At the end of the day.
Sure.
So, okay, so what? Give me an example of one or two examples, no names, of course, of like transformational experiences that some of your clients have had in the leadership world?
It's great timing. It's perfect timing for this, because I just had an email conversation with a CEO that I've been working with for a couple of years. This company is so my background is in therapy and specifically in addiction treatment. And I've worked in treatment centers, and most of my clinical work and my private practice was around addiction and recovery and trauma. And those things go together closely. And so I've got this client who is a treatment center, and not the end users, the directors and the managers and some of some of the therapists, but mostly like the middle, like second and third tier of leadership within the organization. I've been working with them for a couple of years, and our contract is ending in a few weeks. And we've been sort of having a conversation about what's next, how else can I help you? And so I just submitted. This would have been on Thursday night. I submitted a formal proposal to the CEO, and he emailed me back on Monday and said, "All right, I looked at it and it had some comments." And he said this, and this is a little bit self-aggrandizing, and he really did say this. He said, "Bringing you in to work with my team is one of the best decisions I've ever made as a CEO," right? Which I think is a pretty hell of a good compliment. This guy's been a CEO for a long time,
I'd say.
Right? And he said, "I've got this budget." And he's like, if I had twice the money to give to you to bring in and coach every single person on my team, I would do it. I just, they're a nonprofit and there's budgets and it's whatever, right? Yeah. And so that's the big picture. So the question is, what does that mean? And specifically, what it means is, the end result is they're creating better outcomes for their end users, for their patients, which means specifically for them, they're creating a higher level and more stable recovery for people in their community who are struggling with drug and alcohol addiction, which is the name of the game. And by the way, the research in that world is really, really strong, that better leadership with those organizations does lead to better clinical outcomes. So I'm seeing that on an anecdotal level. And so what's happening is within the organization, so some examples of some things that are happening in that organization is there's a level of 5 directors that report directly to the CEO. In other world, they would be called vice presidents, but it's, whatever the terminology is. And so and I've coached all of them individually. And what they've done is they've created groups on their own where they meet regularly in order to create better messaging for the CEO. I call that upstream leadership. And it's what messaging do we want to present to the CEO from a place of efficiency, right? Because the CEO needs a KPI. They don't need the whole novel. They need the 4 bullet points.
Right.
And so these directors have taken it upon themselves to be really organized about what are the real problems that are going to if we solve these things are going to really make our company really catapult us forward. And so they create this messaging to bring to the CEO so he's clear, all the noise is gone. And there's these 3 or 4 things we need to focus on strategically that my most trusted people are bringing to me. And it's not this guy saying that and that guy saying this other thing. Right. And I call that upstream leadership. And so that it creates this really tight feedback loop within the organization, and it helps them be really super efficient about where they're going and let them know what all they can ignore. Right. It's that's one thing that I've seen. Wow. We've seen in that organization, seen lower turnover. I've seen those people become promoted. I've seen people leave that don't fit the model. I got rid of the ones that aren't fitting. And what's left is just the superstars are left, and they're just I can go on forever because I'm super proud of the work they're doing. They're just really killing it.
No, that's amazing. I could feel your passion, and it's real that you're making a tangible, quantifiable, measurable difference, not only in terms of streamlining the operations and making it easier for the CEO and that upstreaming, but on the clinical impact on the end user, the customer of that enterprise, because the health of the leadership in the organization. It sounds to me like what you're doing, at least in that scenario, is you're not just working. You're doing leadership, but you're a cultural agent. You're getting in there and you're remolding the culture together with the CEO and the leaders. Is that
100%? 100%. In fact, one of my goals, I talk about this somewhere on my website, I think about is creating disruptive organizations. in any industry, right? And so, I'll talk about this industry, and I'll talk about another one too. I believe that helping people get clean and sober is the most important work in the world, right? I've got a really strong connection to that world, and I've seen what happens when it goes well and when it goes badly, right? And so helping those people, and I'm super proud of the work that's done by the people in that industry, and they're not doing a good enough job, right? And so it's just being honest, just straight talk, right? Too many people are dying from addiction in our country.
Sure.
And so what we've done for the last 40 years is okay, and we need to do something different, and not 5% or 10% different, but 100% different. Like, take the old model and throw it out and just start from scratch and just blow up the whole industry. Like, that's what I really believe. I think we're in a place in that industry in particular, we're just going to disrupt everything. And so yeah, it's a cultural agent. What I like that terminology. What I see myself doing is going into these organizations and really sort of creating that as part of the culture of like it's okay not to do things the way we've always done it. It's okay to be like insanely creative here. Like, it's okay to just shake our head at the model and say, no, we're going to do something completely nuts here in the service of our community and the work that we're doing. Right? It's that's one example. And another example is a completely different world where this is a Chicago-based company that they're in they're in an industrial space. They do I don't even understand the business very well, which is a funny thing, because that's actually part of the advantage I bring, right? And this is an example of that. They do generators for hospitals and prisons and schools. Really industrial stuff. And so and I've worked with a lot of people in that organization, and the president of the company is a client. And he and I were having a conversation, and he was talking about we compete with, in our industry, there are two companies that hold 55% of the market share, and then 100 other companies that compete for the other 45%. And his thing was I think we can be number 3 in the market. And I was like, well, why don't you just beat the other two big juggernauts? And he literally sat in this office right here and laughed at me, belly laughed at me. And I was looking at him like, what did I say? And he was like, oh, you're serious? I'm like, yeah. Why not?
Right.
Why not? And really sort of creating this thinking within the organization of we're not taking third place here. That's not good enough anymore. And we're gonna shake this industry up so much that when those two juggernauts come and see us at a conference, they're gonna stop looking and go, oh, that's those guys. Where the hell did they come from?
I love it. Third place isn't good enough anymore. I wrote that down. Yeah, well, you're challenging them at so many levels, and I'm thinking about myself I'm being challenged. I'm like, yeah, wow. It's because it's easy to look at Goliath and don't think you're David. You just think that you're like, Goliath will always be Goliath, and sure. You're just going to kind of lumber on, and I'll accept the scraps that fall from the table and move on. But you're challenging that idea. You're like, why in 2023 and in the greatest country in the world with unlimited opportunity
and technology and when you can bring new thinking into an old industry, you've got a competitive advantage.
Do you need to bring new people in to accept that, or are you able to get some of the old thinking people that have been just, they've been doing the same thing over and over, year after year after year, to open up and consider new ways?
It's a great question, and the answer is both. Sometimes I've been very pleasantly surprised at the degree to which old dogs have learned new tricks.
Okay.
And sometimes you have people that you think this guy will never, ever change, and then you give him a chance, and you're like, holy cow, he is really hungry for something new. That happens. And what I've seen is, in the example of the treatment center I was sharing, there were some people that just weren't going to fit anymore. And it became really, really obvious who they were. It was kind of okay, we just got to take the action now. Yeah. And so it happens. And so another, one of the things, my requirements with my clients is that anybody I'm going to coach within your industry, I get right of refusal whether I'm going to work with them or not. And so part of the service that I give to the person who's writing the check is I am not going to waste your money coaching somebody that's not coachable.
Ah, okay.
Right.
So you're upfront honest about that. Yeah.
100%. And I've had several conversations with like, hey, Joe is a great guy and he's been a salesperson for 42 years and he is going to keep selling and he knows everybody in the industry. Let's put him in an office and let him do his thing until he retires. He still brings value.
Yep.
And we're not going to worry about him and we're going to do this with the rest of the company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So here's a question. You mentioned something. So the old dogs and new dogs, learning something new, hungry for something new is what you said. What makes somebody hungry for something new? It's obviously not age. You said you got some of the old dogs that are willing to do it. Sure. What's the motivator for someone?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's all over the board. I think. How would I summarize it? Probably the most clear way would be, not everybody wants to change. Mm-hmm. Right? Not everybody is in therapy. Not everybody is a good coaching client. Sure. And for people who are, there's a lot to benefit. And in a lot of industries, I see this I work with a lot of doctors, for example, and I see this as this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we've always done it. Mm. And when you show somebody listen, you can do the thing you really love to do for the reasons you really want to do it. But what if you could do it in a different way that doesn't kill you? Mm. Speaking of doctors specifically. Yeah. Right. And that gets people's attention. I don't think that's true, but what if it is?
Right. Right.
And so that gets people excited.
So you're cracking a little crack in the ice that opens up potential hope for something new and something better, and without all of the crap you got to deal with in the day-to-day, and focus more in the joy area. Yeah,
possibility is what I talk about. And we get lost in that because I'm like you, Paul. I'm a business owner, and I got stuff to do, and I got a schedule, and I got clients to call, and I got an assistant that needs stuff from me, all of that. And it's really easy to get into the next, and get into the grind. And what I help clients do a lot of times is slow down and look and what do you really want to create in your business and in your life? Mm. And they'll tell me, I'm yeah, that's I love you, and you're playing small here. What's bigger? And helping people because we get into the grind and it closes us off from possibility, mm-hmm. which closes us off from creativity.
So you help them look at possibilities to break out of the monotony of the daily. You call it the grind, the grinder, I think you call it, right?
Yeah.
And you transform that person by looking at the vision of where they could be and what they actually really want in their heart of hearts to be and to do.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's within within what they're already doing. It's not it's saying you're going to close your law practice and go write children's books. I mean, maybe you do that, or maybe you stay in your law practice and do it in a different way, or in your landscape business and do it in a different way, or in your real estate business and do it in a different way, right? From a place of I can just take the book and throw it out. And I'm going to do it from this different perspective. And people are so much more creative than we are given credit for. Right? Yeah. You take any of us back however many years to our 3 or 4 year old version of ourselves, and we were infinitely creative.
Mm. Yeah.
Then we go to school, and we get that all gets trained out of us. And then, for heaven forbid, we start a business, and it's no creative. I just need to make some money.
Yeah, for sure. That's right. No time for creativity. No, we need some bucks here. We got people to pay, and wow, that is amazing. And so do you have a systematic approach with your clients to draw this out? I mean, a framework or something that you use?
I do. So let me see. First of all, the work with individual clients is very unique, right? The client and whatever's on their top of mind with them in the moment is the work. And really, what I talk about is we're not in the same room with people anymore, but the words in the room are the work, right? That said, the larger what's going on in my mind is a framework that I call limitless leadership, right? Yeah. And I think of it as a triangle. And so on one side of the triangle is personal leadership, On one side of the triangle is relational or interpersonal leadership. The third side of the triangle is professional leadership. And when people talk about leadership, what they usually are talking about is that third piece. Right? And so then the other two pieces are where the therapist in me comes in. And it's like, okay, like what you do in your organization to lead it is important, but where that comes from is so much more important. And until somebody really, like you could, and here's the thing, Paul, so you could like not work on the personal and interpersonal leadership your entire career and be fine, be pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. And those, you know, these guys, and I do too, either the colleagues or like that boss you worked for 20 years ago. And there was like, I would follow that guy through a burning building.
Yeah.
Right. We all have that person in our lives. And I bet you if we could bring that person back and sit down and talk to them, they do those first two things really, really well. They lead themselves really well, and they lead within relationships very, very well. And that sets them up so that what they do in their professional leadership is just 5 and 10 and 100 times more effective because of the first two pieces.
So it just flows out of who they are. So they're living a very authentic life in every dimension of their being, right?
Right.
It's not being somebody different. Go ahead.
It's not saying they're perfect, but sure. Yes, it's that authenticity. And it's like, and even in their flawedness, they're authentic and vulnerable about it.
Right. Because because as a leader, we understand that we're not perfect and we understand that's okay. Right. Because we're not perfect.
100%. Yeah, you make them like, and you know, work with leaders like, oh, I don't make many mistakes. I'm like, yeah, you're not working on hard enough problems, right?
So who is it said if you don't fail enough that you're just definitely not taking enough chances?
Yeah, Henry Ford, I think, said something like that. I may attribute it wrongly, but yeah, it's like yeah, like we're supposed to make mistakes, and especially if you're in an entrepreneurial and like a growth phase of your company, like you need to be making some mistakes. I'm like managing risk, obviously on the fringes, but like skinning your knees a little bit and like learning like, ooh, that didn't work. All right, let's try this out, this other crazy thing. And like, oh yeah, eventually something works. And it's like try something and like learn and reiterate and create fast feedback loops within and like own it. Like, oh well, that was a dumb idea. Right.
You know, one of my favorite books, one of my favorite authors, you're probably familiar with him, Price Pritchett, who's written these very short books. There's one, U Squared, and he talks about getting out there on the edge and how do you know what you can even do until you're getting pushed back. You get pushback, you get resistance. And I think it was Dan Kennedy or someone that said when you're pricing your product or your service, if you're not getting any pushback at all, then your prices are too low, right? You're just like, I'm afraid that they're going to say no or whatever. Well, so no, you need some pushback because then you could be way up here, but yet you're down here scratching with the chickens instead of flying with the eagles, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's
wow.
That's all a part of it.
This is amazing. Well, this has been a great time. We're already out of time, Clay. I mean, it goes fast.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
it
So just winding down, a couple of things. Any last things you want to add to the conversation? And then also I want to get out there how anyone can get in contact with you if they want to dial up their leadership to the next level and if some of this has resonated with them. And I know there are a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners that listen to this, and we're all looking to do better, you know, and most of us realize we're the problem. We just don't know how to necessarily fix it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I would offer in parting is it's all good. Like it's all good. Like if you're in the entrepreneurial game, you're running a business, or you're running a department. You're doing fine. And if you want to do better, like that's great. And just like this judgment and this like what's wrong with me kind of mentality is that's the pebble in the shoe for most people that I work with. And when we can sort of be more kind and gentle with ourselves and in the context of our leadership, that alone is very, very powerful and helps people move forward. So I'll leave that. And those who want to connect with me, Square Peg Coaching is my company, and that's not an accidental name. Like I'm a square peg. I'm a disruptor, and I attract people who think differently and outside the box. And if you want to keep doing things the way you've always done it, you and I will probably not have a very long conversation. I love you, and I'm not your guy, right? And so I'm all over social media under Square Peg Coaching, and squarepegcoaching.net, NET, is my main website. And so if anyone wants to get in touch with me, that's the best way to do it. I'll share my email address here. I know it's hard to write down on the audio, but clay@squarepegcoaching.net will come directly to me.
Okay, beautiful. So you are 80 grit sandpaper. You're gonna rub someone the wrong way, but in a good way, right?
Yeah, I had one of the best compliments I ever had from one of my clients was he said, "Clay, I love you and I hate you." But I'll take it.
That is a great conversation. I like that comment. I was thinking if I ever had that with my wife. Anyway. Well, Clay, this has been a blast, man. I appreciate your time. Super valuable and a lot to think about, a lot to digest, and just the whole possibility thing resonates with me. It's like, yeah, man, there's so much more that we could do if we just believe it, right? And do things differently. So thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Hey, gang, just winding down here today. Thanks for listening to the show. And as always, if you need capital to grow your business, you're looking to purchase commercial real estate or build a building or invest in commercial real estate, or you're looking to acquire a business or a competitor, or just need growth capital, we'd love to talk to you. We fund businesses all day long. Our mission is to help entrepreneurs win and to fund their businesses and fund their dreams so that they can make an impact in their community. Reach out to me today. Go to our website, click the button to schedule a 20-minute conversation, discovery call. We'll have a quick conversation, see if there's a need, see if there's a fit, and we can take it from there. The website is VPC, Victor Paul Charlie .capital. That's VPC.capital. All right, there's no .com on that. It's VPC.capital. As always, keep crushing it and hope to see you soon around here. Take care.